Okay, could I just remind everybody, if they're not speaking, just to keep themselves on mute? And as well, if you see in your own square that your name is not correct, could you please change it to your correct name? Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Petnuzzo. I'm a senior planner with the City of Brantford in the development planning area. And we're here tonight because I've received applications for a zoning bylaw and official plan amendment for 12 Fisher Street. The meeting is being streamed on YouTube and will be available for your viewing afterward. If you are viewing and have comments or questions that aren't brought forward, please let me know following the meeting and I can do my best to have them answered. This is only the first meeting for the proposal to receive public feedback from the applicant to take into consideration. The next meeting will be a statutory meeting required by the Planning Act, presented to the Committee of the Whole. Members of the public will have the opportunity to speak for or against the proposal at that time. And I just want to do a little bit of introductions to say who's going to be present at the meeting today. So the councillors for the meeting are Councillor Weaver and Councillor Vanderstelt. Of course, my name is Nicole Petnuzzo, and we have Bryn O'Neill. She'll be taking notes for this evening. She's another planner in the department. And Gary Peaver is the manager of engineering. The agent for this application is James Webb. He's from Webb Planning Consultants. And the owner of the property is Don Cusack from Don Victoria Homes. They have their architect and their transportation engineering, as well as their civil engineers here. And those are all the people that will be present at this time. We may also have the mayor on the call as well. And anyone else that is going to sign in, I can update you who else is present at the meeting. So before we begin, I'll just do a little bit of a presentation as to the purpose of the applications. So the purpose is really to construct, here's the proposal here, is to construct 6 detached dwellings along Nightingale Drive. The 2 blocks of 2-story townhouses are abutting the existing houses along Fisher. And there are 7 blocks of stacked townhouses, and they're within the interior of the site as well as abutting Shellard Lane. I'm going to provide an overview on how the planning process works, and then I'll pass it over to the applicant to present their proposal. So the zoning bylaw and official plan amendments are requirements under the Planning Act, and I'll just go into the official plan at this moment. So if you see on the screen, this is the schedule out of our official plan. And it's basically a framework of goals and objectives that the city provides for land use designations and policies which will guide the future development. The zoning bylaw puts the official plan into effect. It states how the land can be used, where buildings and other structures can be located, where the types of buildings that are permitted, and how they can be used. It also regulates lot sizes and dimensions, parking requirements, building heights, and setbacks from the street. So the subject lands are actually designated residential medium density in the official plan. The applicant is requesting to amend the official plan designation for the single detached dwellings along Nightingale Drive to low density. Since that built form is not permitted in the residential medium density designation, that's the reason for their official plan amendment. The subject lands are zoned R4A, if you see on the screen here, is an actual medium density, which is a zoning that permits townhouses. The applicant is proposing to change the zoning to a site-specific for the medium built form of townhouses, and that's to allow some of the regulations to be tweaked somewhat throughout the zoning. But it's also to actually zone the single detached homes that are along Nightingale Drive to low density. So that's pretty much the existing permissions from the city at this point. I'll put it over to the applicant, James Webb, and he will, he's got a team there that can also assist, but he's got a presentation, and we'll answer some questions after the applicant does his presentation. So if I'll just stop sharing the screen, and Darlene, if you can just allow James to do his presentation, okay? Thank you.
Sure, Nicole, and thank you for that. James, I think you're coming in under my name. If you could change your square to reflect your proper name, then I can allow you to share your screen, please and thank
My
you.
square. Can you, so first of all, can you hear me okay? I've been able to unmute myself.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so you've asked me to change my square. I'm assuming that's one of the names across the top.
Yes.
If you right click your square, down at the bottom, it'll say rename.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just wait for you to rename and then I'll allow you ability to share your screen.
That work.
All right, we've
Absolutely
Gotcha,
mandatory
and-
to have someone on these calls that knows how to work it.
and you can now share your screen, please.
Okay, can everyone see? Okay, so that's the quick we'd like to offer you this evening. Can everyone see that okay? And everyone hear me okay?
There's a lot of electronic static, James. Might be from your plug.
Well, I'm on a headset, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. So I'll speak slowly and clearly. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, your worship, and neighbors. Again, my name is James Webb. I'm a professional land use planner based in Hamilton and speaking to you tonight on behalf of Dawn Victoria Homes. Dawn Victoria Homes are a local home builder based in Hamilton, Burlington, and their specialty really is in doing projects like this, infill developments of medium density, ground related townhouse type projects within established neighborhoods. Also with me, as you heard tonight, we have Dawn Husak from Dawn Victoria Homes, the architect, Fabian is here, and our traffic consultant to answer any questions that may arise on those particular issues. So what I'd like to do very quickly is just provide really the neighbors a chance to make sure that they have a full and complete understanding of what this development application is proposing. I want to make sure that I cover all of the issues that are important to them, for them to have a full grasp of what's happening on this piece of land. And then afterwards, we're more than pleased to assist the residents with any questions that they may have, whether we can address those tonight or through additional follow-up responses after tonight's meeting. So as you've heard very briefly from the presentation from Nicole, there's the subject property. Frontage essentially on two major roads, Shellard Lane, Nightingale Avenue, and a very small sliver of land that was protected to provide a connection to Fisher. And just to be absolutely clear, that connection really was designed for no other purpose than stormwater management. There is no intent to do any development within that sliver other than potential landscaping, maybe some form of a trail connection, but otherwise it's reserved for underground infrastructure. What's interesting about the site is that I'm just going to jump forward a slide. This is the registered plan of subdivision from what was the, I know I'm going to pronounce this terribly wrong, but the Dabogenet Forest Estates plan of subdivision. So the subdivision that the neighbors are presently living in is actually a relatively new development. This registered plan was deposited, I believe, in 2004. And it was at that point in time that the subdivision was essentially established in terms of its layout. You can see here the internal streets, Fisher Street, Nightingale, Yarrington, all of which were connecting to McGuinness, which then outlet, excuse me, to provide connections out to Shellard Lane. So what you can see from the drawing is that the block that we're working on, block 83, has always been located internal to this subdivision, and the manner in which it was created has anticipated and been designed in a manner in which all of the traffic for this development does in fact have to flow through those existing streets. This isn't something that we've chosen. This is how the nature of this plan of subdivision was initially created, and we're following that. And I make the point because ideally, if we could, we would take the traffic directly out onto Shellard Avenue, but because Shellard is a controlled access arterial road, I don't believe that the city would allow us to revert traffic flow directly out onto Shellard. So we're designing the project to essentially implement what was initially created by way of the configuration of the block, and in which this traffic will then infiltrate through the neighborhood out to McGuinness and ultimately to Shellard. These are a couple of quick photographs of the subject property. So again, top photograph is a view from Nightingale Drive. You can see the lands are remaining vacant. Nightingale has been improved to, I'll say, a base level of infrastructure. There's street lights, there are catch basins, but the sidewalk that have been completed, and all of that work would be undertaken through the development of the plan of subdivision. The lower image shows Shellard Lane, and you can see that the efforts that the municipality has taken to create Shellard, not just as a mover of high volumes of traffic, but also to become, a major corridor of movement for pedestrians as well. There's the large pedestrian trail abutting Shellard, and the properties immediately to the right. That small section of black metal fencing is where the storm outlet comes under Shellard Avenue, enters the property, and then will flow through the property. And that's a part of the site that we're looking to improve and, in fact, potentially convert into some form of public and or private amenity space. You heard a brief presentation from Nicole. I won't dwell on this. This is essentially the underlying framework within which this application is being proposed. The lands are within the urban area. They're subject to the greenfield policies as opposed to built-up area policies. The site is presently designated, in fact, has been designated since the block was initially created for medium-density uses. And that designation permits a broad mix of essentially ground-related type medium-density housing, townhouses, block townhouses, street townhouses. The zoning on the lands also has been in place since the block was initially created back in 2004. The lands are currently zoned for that R4A category, which is a residential medium density type A zone. And it does permit certain types of townhouses to a maximum of 3 stories of height. As you did hear, we are proposing to make modifications, and in part, some of those modifications are necessary. And I think it's important to appreciate the zoning bylaw that we're working from, just by way of bit of useless information, but my very first planning job was at Walker Not-Dragicic in Toronto 30 years ago, and at that point in time, that's when the city of Brantford zoning bylaw was being created. Comment just to say that the bylaw was developed under a very different provincial policy framework, a very different set of guiding principles in terms of priorities for development and design. What happened more recently is that projects are being influenced by urban design criteria, which are encouraging a different form of development in terms of how development relates to the public realm, how it relates to the streetscape, setbacks, parking ratios, and a range of other issues that we're seeing in newer developments, which is why so often when we bring applications forward, we're working from older zoning bylaws and proposing amendments that we feel are appropriate to implement new development that is all-encompassing, not just of a policy framework, proper regard for the neighborhood, but also proper regard for urban design guidelines. Excuse me. As you heard, we are also proposing to do a rezoning for a part of the property to work back to a lower density, and I'll come back to that in a moment when I describe the development concepts. So when we first began, this is an image that we had presented to the municipality just in terms of initiating the conversation in terms of what we thought was appropriate to develop on the property. As you can see on the left-hand side from Nightingale Avenue, there's 2 points of entry onto the site, a total of 9 blocks of units that were a combination of 3-story stacked townhouses and 3-story back-to-back townhouses are made. Familiar with that? Grand total of 118 units. So a very project in terms of orient to the streetscape, because you see side elevations. If my cursor is working, you can see what the side elevations of the buildings are directly oriented to Nightingale, as opposed to what the majority of the neighborhood is characterized by, which is the fronts of units. We have front doors, garages, people activity space more directly oriented to the street. So presented that to staff at a pre-consultation meeting, and through some back and forth, we subsequently then went and modified the development proposal. Here is the image that Nicole shared with you as well. So this is what's currently before the city. We've taken that Nightingale frontage and essentially seeking to implement what I refer to as a transitional land use. Nightingale is today characterized by single-family homes. So we think that by putting 6 single-family lots arranged directly fronting onto Nightingale is appropriate. Lot sizes are generally the same, not very similar to the existing single-family lots that exist in the balance of adjoining subdivision lands. What you see internal to the site, beginning on the northern portion, we have 2-story townhouses, which have a fairly significant setback. They have a 10.5 meter setback. There's the rear line of the homes that front onto Fisher Avenue. And then internal to the site, we have stacked townhouses. And then lastly, at the bottom, fronting onto Shellard Lane is a very specific housing form, as I said, which is a reactionary housing form to urban design principles, wherein the sort of the activity, the business side of the units in terms of their parking and entrances are oriented interior to the site. And as you'll see in a moment, the streetscape side is also designed in a manner in which it has a face or an active facade that has entrances into the building, lots of windows, as opposed to what had been happening in past years where developments were essentially turning their back on the public streetscape and creating that really did nothing in terms of a contribution to a good and active public streetscape. The development is now refined, and there's a single point of access, which essentially is at the bend of the road. So there's very little impact to any adjoining properties in terms of street lights coming in or out compared to what was previously shown. And the access then provides connectivity internal to a road network that provides in total 146 parking spaces. Now, I'm just going to quickly ask if Eric could just talk, our transportation consultant. She's been working very hard on the transportation impacts and the parking justification, because we are seeking some very minor modifications. So Monica, excuse me, I guess to Darlene, if you could please unmute Erica. She's just going to offer a couple comments with respect. I just realized my video has been closed this whole time. I apologize for that. If we could unmute Erica, she can just make some brief comments with regards to the parking supply.
Absolutely. She's been unmuted. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Erica. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So the proposed parking supply for the site is 146 spaces. And for specifically the stacked townhouses, it's 114 spaces, which works out to 1.37 spaces per unit. The city of Brantford does not have a specific bylaw requirement for stacked townhouses. The requirement for block townhouses is 1.5 spaces per unit. So if we go by the 1.5 spaces, we are 15 spaces deficient for serving the stacked townhouses. The city of Brantford in June of 2019 did amend the bylaw for one specific property at 677 Park Road North and allowed for a unique stacked townhouse rate that was 1 space per stacked townhouse and 20 spaces for visitors. And if that rate were applied to our site, the requirement would be 106 spaces for the stacked townhouses, which would be, we would be providing more than that. And to compare our site to that site, we have the same distance to commercial at Colborne and Shellard as the property on Park Road North does. Shellard has a wonderful mixed-use trail on the north side, accommodating cyclists and pedestrians, and a sidewalk on the south side. And the closest location for pedestrians to cross is next door at the intersection with Conklin, which, comparing to the Park Road North site, they would have to go 600 meters down to Dunstan to cross the street. The schools are right along Shellard, making this development very attractive for cyclists and pedestrians. And there's also 2 bus routes along Shellard to serve the development, and the development will have pedestrian connection out to Shellard. Auto ownership rates in the area of This development are 1.2 vehicles per townhouse and 1 vehicle for apartment units. And a stacked townhouse kind of falls in between, kind of a crossover between a townhouse and apartment. So we're seeing auto ownership rates that are less than what we are providing. We're seeing that the site is very well served by transportation demand management measures with the pedestrian and cycling access and with the transit access, and is even better served than compared to the 677 Park Road North site, which was allowed a lower rate of parking for the stacked townhouses. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for that, Erica. So in terms of where we are in the process, just so that everyone is aware, as Nicole has said, so the applications have been submitted. The municipality has undertaken a fulsome review through their various departments, whether it be traffic, transportation, public works, transit, and it provided us a set of review comments based on the first submission. We're presently working through all of those comments and intend to be making a resubmission sometime within the next 2 to 3 weeks that will ideally be addressing a number of those conditions and potentially modifying the development concept. And the reason that I've asked Erica to provide that brief proposal is that we are hearing from staff that of course, unlike a lot of redevelopments, there's always a concern about parking. Is there enough parking provided on the development? Is it meeting the standards? Notwithstanding that the standards of the bylaw may be somewhat outdated, but are they meeting the standards of the context of the site in terms of necessary supply and surrounding it? What is the context for the development? So we are working on some updates. This plan, I've only just shared this with staff today because it's preliminary. We haven't made a formal resubmission, but we're already working towards seeing if we can't provide some additional on-site parking. And what you can see in this area close to the entrances, we're identifying additional visitor parking, and these may in fact be reserved for electric vehicle charging stations. And we're looking at potentially modifying the interior design of some of the 2-story townhouse units so that they can in fact have 4 parking spaces instead of 2. Again, I'll just quickly, just for the information of everyone, here are some detailed preliminary renderings of what the various housing products will look like. So these are the 2 blocks that are located at the north of the development, backing onto the existing homes at Fisher Avenue. So again, 2-story townhouses, and it's a true 2-story development, not in that there's no windows into the roof, there's no dormers, so there's no concerns about overlook. And as I said earlier, there's already a very significant setback from the rear elevation of these homes to the property line of the adjoining properties. Typically a setback of 7.5 meters is required, and we're managing to achieve a greater setback of 10.5 meters. These are the elevations for the stacked townhouses, and just so everyone understands, stacked townhouse is essentially taking one vertical unit, which would be this unit, and within that space has 2 dwelling units. So there's an at-grade level that has a floor area of about 650 square feet. And then on the upper levels, an additional unit that is larger will have a square footage in the range of about 1,400 square feet. So again, it's a housing product that responds to market conditions, and that some people can only afford the smaller units.
Sorry, James. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
James, I'm really sorry to interrupt. I don't mean to be rude. I apologize profusely. It is really difficult to understand everything that you're saying. Is there any way that you may be able to dislocate your headset and go directly to your laptop? Is that a possibility?
If you give me 2 minutes, I'll have to log in that way.
I apologize, James. It's just.
Oh no, that's fine. There's no point listening if you can't hear me clearly. So brand new technology that was just installed in my computer, so I apologize if it's not working properly.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. I just want to be sure that we can hear you. That's all. Okay.
So if I speak slower, is the quality any better?
No, not at all. No, sorry.
Okay. All right, just give me one moment. I'm just going to grab my other headset.
Thank you.
See if I mute or if I stop the video feed, is the vocals improved?
No, it is not.
Okay, oh, that was one attempt. Okay, I'm just going to log in. I'm going to disconnect my audio from the computer and I'll use the audio from the laptop.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome Mayor Davis. He's on the line this evening, and I wasn't able to introduce him earlier, so I just like to introduce him to the group. And if you have any questions later on after the presentation, city staff and the applicant can take those questions after the presentation. So thank you for being patient, and we'll be with you in just one moment.
Okay, Darlene, I'm now on my laptop. Can you hear me okay?
So much better.
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize for that. I will return that headset tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to try and keep working between two computers, and I do very much apologize for that. I'm not sure how much of that presentation was understood, and I do apologize. So again, I'll just finish with a couple of additional slides. So I just wanted everyone to understand what the product is that's being proposed for the development. Again, these are the stacked townhouse units. As I said, 2 units, one stacked above the other. We have the rear lane townhouse product, which is going to be oriented 2 blocks of units that are fronted towards Shellard Avenue, designed such that they have an active street presence with full windows, primary window openings, designed in a manner to contribute to the character of the streetscape. And it's this image here, I think. The renderings are great, but this is actually a project that was built by Dawn Victoria Homes on Barton Street in Hamilton. And that gives you a sense for the, what I'd like to stress is not just the built form, but also appreciate the attention to detail that Dawn Victoria uses when they do their architectural renderings and designs. They use very high quality building materials, high quality windows, enhanced treatments such as those dormers that you see on the rooftop, which are all designed and packaged to ensure that the product that is created by Dawn Victoria really goes a long way towards improving the streetscape and achieving all of the urban design objectives of the municipality. Here's a similar project again in Burlington. Again, appreciate what we're showing you is a variation of architectural styles. Each and every project will have its own architectural theme. Again, this is something on Plains Road that was actually a live work component wherein we had a combination of commercial units at grade, residential units above. And here's an example of a 2-story townhouse product, an end unit. As I said, we're looking at making some modifications to those 2-story block townhouses at the top to actually have a 2-story or a double car garage fronting the internal street, and then the entrance is built into the side of the dwelling. You also heard Erica mention a project on Park Road North. That was actually a development by Dawn Victoria Homes that was recently completed. It's in fact just finished its site plan approvals process and is now proceeding to construction. It's been very well received by the municipality in terms of sales. It's, I believe, at 95% sold out. It's in a somewhat different area of the city in that it's on Park Road North up against Powerline Road. So it's not as well located in terms of pedestrian connectivity. It doesn't have the same types of commercial uses, schools, parks, open space, and trail system that the Shellard Avenue site does. But again, what it's showing you in this imagery, you'll see a small parkette and amenity space that's been built into the development. And in the background, you see what has been constructed on the site as an example of stacked townhouses. The last image, again, just showing some further examples of the type of architecture and attention to detailing that Dawn Victoria Homes uses in all of their projects. They make my job very easy because they have a very high commitment to excellence in architectural design and the choice of building materials such that it's a high-end product. It's very attractive. It complements existing neighborhoods and really designed with the key and fundamental principle of creating architecture and creating homes that are a valued contribution to the existing neighborhoods within which they're built. So again, I do very much apologize. I'm not sure how much of my presentation you were able to understand and hear clearly. I'd be happy to repeat any component of it. Again, you know, this is essentially the midway point of our planning application review process. We've made the initial submission to the city. They've conducted a review and commentary on the proposal, and we're about to respond to that. But as a very integral component of that, this is our first opportunity to reach out to the neighborhood and the councillors to obtain some feedback with regards to what it is that we're proposing on this site, such that any of those comments we can potentially address in our next submission to staff, and ultimately have the project reviewed, zoning bylaws drafted, and the matter then scheduled for a future public meeting of planning committee with a recommendation that's in support of the development proposal. So Don or Fernando, I'm not sure if you want to add anything further to those comments. Hopefully your connections are better than mine and you'll be better communicatable with the neighbors. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and we'd be pleased, any one of us on the project team, to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. I'll, at this point in time, the host, Darlene, will go through the attendees list and ask if there's any questions for the applicant on the application. If Mayor Davis or any of the councillors would like to have any comments or questions, I will just leave the floor open. Thank you.
Okay, before I start with our public inquiries and comments, Mayor Davis, do you have any questions or concerns you would like to raise?
No, not relevant to this particular application, other than to say I'm very happy to be out here in Ward 1 because I can tell you this, that myself and the ward councillors are a very solid team representing the interests of Ward 1 and making sure that, especially the Shellard Lane area, long underserviced, is properly serviced. And thus, I have an interest in what happens in Shellard Lane.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Weaver, did you have any questions or concerns you'd like to address?
I do, thank you. First question is, have we approached the neighbors, the apartment building that's being planned beside this unit, to see if there's any ability to have a drive-through that way, rather than bringing traffic onto Nightingale and Fisher?
I can, if I'm still unmuted.
You are, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I can tell you, so Don Victoria Homes did have dialogue with the owner of that property significantly towards that very objective, and there was no interest back from that landowner to entertain any sort of easement or traffic flow through their site.
Okay. That's unfortunate. This is a tough development to support when it goes out through these types of neighborhood streets. So parking. So you had stated parking generally is not really a concern, but I'll tell you, in Brantford, it's a huge concern. We spend copious amounts of time dealing with parking issues in this specific area. So we really need to make sure that we have the required parking. And perhaps city staff could correct me, but I believe the Park Road development, I think the reasoning for the lesser amount of parking was because there was going to be some commercial properties on the bottom floors, and staff determined that because of those commercial properties, they weren't going, and the type of commercial properties they were going to be, they weren't going to need parking, and that's why that reduction was allowed. I don't believe that would be the case in this instance. And then my first question, because those were just comments, can we talk about like snow placements, fencing? We have any thoughts about how that's going to look?
Appreciate the current process is focused on official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. We haven't yet filed an application for site plan approval. That being said, the drawing before you is essentially at that level of detail. Snow storage obviously will be accommodated on site, and we can certainly identify those areas as part of this next update and submission to the city. Fencing details, we haven't proposed any specifics yet. I was actually having some dialogue today with town staff, or excuse me, city staff with regards to any zoning bylaw requirements. But certainly we do have an interface with the rear lot line of those homes on Fisher Street. So the intent would be to work directly with those neighbors. If there's new fencing, there's no point in ripping it down and replacing it. So we work essentially with those neighbors to identify what existing fencing can stay and then what fencing may be appropriate. And that would also apply to any existing boundary trees. We'd be doing a tree protection plan as part of a site plan application that would identify any boundary trees or trees that are close to the property lines. And again, because of that significant setback, we should be able to save the majority of existing vegetation that does exist along that mutual lot line. I think the other lot lines are less sensitive in terms of fencing issues and tree retention. In fact, there is very little existing vegetation on the site.
Okay, thank you for that. What about trash pickup? I don't see any turnarounds, and we don't allow our trucks to back up.
Yeah. The project has been designed on the basis of using the MOLOC system, so we would be designed for private collection.
Good, okay. So that's all the general questions I have. I'm looking forward to hearing, hopefully there's some citizens on tonight so I can get some feedback from them as well. So thank you very much.
Councillor Weaver, we have 4 members of the public wanting to ask questions. And before I return to that list, Councillor Vanderstel, did you have any questions or concerns you would like to raise?
Yeah, my first question is, why did Councillor Weaver ask all my questions? For Mr. Webb, no, I don't have specific questions at this point as far as the build goes. I do have a major problem with the traffic, though. From what I can tell, we're looking at probably 300 to 400 trips if we're basing it on how many cars will be parked in this area. We're looking at that many trips per day, feasibly. It seems a little overwhelming. I guess my question to James would be, outside of your conversation with the adjoining property that's not yet been developed, did you have any other conversations with anybody with regard to routing traffic anywhere but through that neighborhood?
Through you, Mr. Councillor. Well, initially, we certainly had direct conversations with city staff about the opportunities to make a connection to Shellard. And they said, no, as long as this subdivision has been planned, there's 1-foot reserves, and there's the public trail that effectively separates this site from Shellard. So in their view and their commentary back to us, the connection directly to Shellard is a non-starter. And that's unfortunate. And as I said at the outset, it's just the manner in which this subdivision was designed and approved. And we're now at the implementation stage 17 years later. But effectively what they did when they approved the plan was they put a medium density block at the farthest point from the adjoining collector road. So our traffic does need to exfiltrate and infiltrate through those existing streets. Thankfully, there's more than one in-road and out-road to connect to Conklin, Shellard, and McGuinness. So we believe that there's an opportunity for that traffic to lessen in terms of its impact. It won't all go in a single direction. If you like, I can have our traffic consultant provide a more reasoned commentary in terms of traffic trips. They certainly have undertaken the study based on the current intent for these lands to be developed for this number of units. They've undertaken analysis and again, have deemed the road network to be appropriate to handle that amount of traffic. So if you'd like, Councillor, I can certainly have our traffic consultant answer any questions if that would assist you. Would you like to hear from Erica?
I think so. It couldn't hurt just to hear what the numbers are according to your studies. Yes.
Okay. So specifically, we have this. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through here. The site is forecast to generate, so we do the transportation impact study, the TIS, evaluated the AM and PM weekday peak hours. And we found in the AM peak hour about 56 total trips to and from the site, and in the PM about 65. And then those are split, kind of going to the east, going to the west, getting out to Shellard Lane from McGuinness and Conklin. Would you like some information on the operations?
Sorry, if you could reiterate, maybe it's me, but if you have parking for total parking for 130, was it?
46.
146.
Yep.
Would we not see 2 trips a day for every one of those vehicles?
Not necessarily. So the way our analysis is done is we focus on 1 hour in the morning. Sorry, I'm talking with my hands and I don't have my video on. 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon, because those are the critical hours for the intersections. And that's how we do our operations analysis. So you're right. It could, over the course of the day, we could see that, but the busiest times of day are going to be in the AM and the PM, and not everyone will be leaving at exactly the same, within the same hour, and coming home within the same hour. It's distributed over the course of the day.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
I hope so. I'll leave it to anyone else who has questions about the same topic to ask for better clarification or specific clarification.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderstel. We now move to the question period from the public. We have a Mr. Adam McColman. Adam, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead with your question, sir.
Okay, I guess my question with our property being 320 Shellard Lane on the west side, or adjacent to the west side, I guess it's not going to abut right up to us, is basically the impact on our property. I noticed that it shows the asphalt walkway going between there, and I don't know if that's the developer or the city that's planning that. But I know there was somebody in that area doing a tree survey this summer, I believe. I was just wondering if they planned on impacting any of those trees, and if there's going to be fencing. I think they mentioned something about fencing earlier along the back of those stacked townhouses.
I can jump in here, Adam. It's Gary Peaver. I'm with the city, the development engineering section. And that walkway here, and on the screen here, I believe it's labeled as Block 84. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So that was approved by City Council back when this subdivision came forward as that walkway connection piece. And that is ultimately on to still the subdivision developer to get that constructed. So there is a planned walkway between Nightingale and Shellard to create that connection. I believe there are some scrub trees in there, and they might be looking at that now and potentially getting ready to get that constructed, as in terms it was looking at getting that constructed the same time that potentially this development was coming forward as well. So there is work going on that there would be a walkway put there.
Okay, because I know I had heard something about land being purchased on the west side of us to have the walkway on that side. So I guess that is not going to happen, because that's where we would prefer it, but that's beyond our control. My other comment was just about having the stacked, like Block 9 being the stacked townhouses. Because I know that's, even though it's, I guess, from the townhouse to our property line is only going to be about 50 feet from what I'm estimating. It also, it seems really close to have a 3-story building there. I know you said the plan was done in 17 years ago, I believe. And I just think with the people that are on Fisher Street who purchased their houses with the plan already in place, they're being afforded 2-story townhouses abutting them, whereas we're going to have 3-story stacked townhouses right adjacent to our property. So.
So what was your address? I'm sorry. What was your address again? We want to put it in the minutes.
Oh, we're at 320 Shellard Lane.
320 Shellard. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so, and you're on the other side of the proposed walkway?
Yeah, we're west of block 84, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so you have a little bit of distance from the walkway to your property. There's, I think, 7.55 rear yard setback for those 3-story stacked townhouses, but we'll definitely make sure that we put your concerns in the minutes. And we just wanted to note what your address was. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, was there any follow-up question, Adam?
No, I don't think so. No.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Jonathan Smith. Jonathan, if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question.
A question or questions? Can I ask more than one?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, well, I'm a resident on 8 Fisher, that just close to the easement where you'd go through for this proposal. I share the same sentiment as Councillor Weaver with regards to the bottleneck of the traffic flows for this proposed site plan. It seems to me that looking at the first proposed one, you would have better traffic flows in and out with the initial plan instead of going with lots 1 to 6 on Nightingale. We have some grave concerns where we are right now. I mean, we're not really people that really call and complain, but I'm a new resident to Brantford. And just where we are on our development alone, we've had real issues with the with parking on our street on Fisher. There's residents that there's more cars than actual residents, and I can't even back my truck out of my. I can't back my truck out without almost banging into a car on either side of the street, and that's why with this. With this plan, I'm not so sure that to have more higher or medium density residential, but I would really request that if this plan does go through, that there needs to be a look at tighter zone or tighter parking controls, and because the snowplow can barely get through. Where we live, it's just it's very obtuse. So I just want to know how many zoned visitor parking spots are proposed in this development as well.
I can assist with that question. So there are 98 units within the development comprising the townhouse component. We think that we have visitor parking in the range of, I think it's about 36 to 38. So it's a ratio of just under 0.5 per unit, which is the desired rate according to the zoning bylaws. Again, we're working closely with our architect to see if there's additional opportunities for us to supplement the amount of visitor parking. The zoning bylaws do have a standard. As you heard from Erica, we're also looking to implement any other measures we can on the site in terms of how that parking is made available. The contemporary approach to parking, I know that this will sound somewhat backward, but we're trying to discourage automotive use by not providing an excessive parking. In developments where you have excessive numbers of parking spaces, the data shows that in fact, you result in unnecessary vehicle trips. So when they talk about transportation demand management measures, usually one of the recommendations is to try to minimize the amount of surplus parking and visitor parking such that you can achieve that threshold where the fundamental point, which is really to your questions and your submissions, we need to avoid any overflow parking and contain all of the parking onto the site. So, we're working very hard to ensure that we can hit that number. We've done the science based on parking studies and parking analysis that we think the development is within the realm of ensuring that all parking requirements will be met on site. Your comments, though, are very well taken. In a lot of cases, that whole issue of existing parking situations is really a municipal enforcement issue. It's not something that's going to be exacerbated by this development necessarily, and it is something that can be looked at through the cooperation between staff, your ward councillors, and the residents.
Thank you for your response. Is there a specific start date and finish date for this development project?
Obviously, the developer would like to build it as quickly as possible. That's ideal for the developer and that's ideal for the neighborhood. We still have to get through the planning approvals process, which will take us probably another 4 to 6 months, which will include an application for site plan approval. And ultimately, there will be a plan of condominium. And to be clear, the intended tenure is a condominium for all of these units. They will be owned. There will be a condominium board on the property. So if that's important to the neighborhood, understand that issues of property maintenance will be fully implemented and coordinated through the board of directors. It's not an ad hoc approach. It's done properly through a property manager to ensure that the lands are properly looked after and there's no negative impacts onto the adjoining developments.
Also, was there any environmental impact assessment done on the in the proposed development between that and the RDH, which is I find having in West Brant to have a 9 to 12 unit rise high density in that area just does not fit with the surrounding area.
I'm sorry, perhaps I'm not understanding. When you say an environmental assessment, do you mean in terms of natural environment issues or more of
well, there's a creek that runs through that property that divides this proposed development in the RDH site.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So what that is a municipal storm outlet. There is a storm sewer on the opposite side of Shellard Lane that's outletting under the road through this site in an uncontrolled manner and then connecting to an inlet at Fisher Street. So the intent is to reconfigure that into a pipe system essentially through the entirety of the site. So it's not a feature that's been deemed to be an environmentally sensitive type of feature. For all intents, it's a piece of municipal infrastructure that's conveying storm flows.
So it'll be rezoned and we'll have piping structure through there?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So no real, you said 4 to 6 months for the actual planning approval still, but no specific start date then, correct?
No start date has been determined as of yet. Obviously, we need to get through the planning process and make sure that all of our studies are appropriate and that we've addressed all of the concerns of the residents and the city. So I can't really commit, and I don't want to mislead you in any way. I think what we can do is certainly set up some sort of interactive message board or some similar method to communicate, and we can provide for regular feedback with the neighborhood, whether that's by email or any other opportunities, perhaps through Dawn Victoria's website itself.
Yeah, that would be appreciated.
And then when we actually proceed to development and construction, every municipality is now very concerned about making sure that there's no adverse construction impacts. So there'll be a full and complete construction management plan in place that will identify everything that the neighborhood needs to know in terms of if there's issues with noise, dust, or odor, who to phone. There'll be notice boards on the property and direct liaison with any municipal staff if there's any concerns during construction.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I just want to let you know too that if you have any questions or if you want to keep up on any type of resubmissions, then by all means, you can call me, send me an email. I can send you any updated submissions that are available that the applicant submits to the city. And I can do that with everyone that's registered for the meeting once we get a resubmission in, and we can keep the dialogue going with city staff as well.
Thanks, Nicole, and thank you, Jonathan. Our next member of the public who would like to ask a question is Mr. Justin Lee. Justin, if you'd like to go ahead with your question.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Appreciate the time tonight. So I have, my wife and I have two questions. First is we're having trouble connecting the dots on the traffic flow on Nightingale. We live at 54 Nightingale, and just trying to understand how increasing the number of units that are going to drive along Nightingale, essentially by more than double, kind of fits the structure of the street that was originally designed for about approximately 60 houses.
Erica, if you can perhaps assist us with that one, but again,
Yep.
I'll go back to first principles. This road network has always been designed and configured in a manner anticipating that this block, which was designated when the plan was initially created, the block has always been intended for this form of development. But I'll defer to Erica for the more substantive comments on traffic.
So Nightingale would qualify as, just hold on a second. Sorry. As a local road within the road network, and local roads are designed to support about 1,000 vehicles per day in 24 hours. And so currently on Nightingale, we have about 300 per day. So it's quite low. So there's ample capacity available, and we're looking to increase it. So the way our study's done is we look at the existing traffic, and then we look at forecast background traffic. So that is kind of generalized growth. It takes into account other developments that may be in the area, not including ours. So after we add that in, so we're at about 250, 300, and then we kind of go up to closer to 400 just with background, not including our site. And then when we add in our site, we end up around about 500, 550 over the course of the day. And so that's still well within the capacity of the road of 1,000 vehicles per day for a local road classification.
It seems like a lot for a residential street though. And that's where we're struggling, is that a street with 2 courts was designed for over 1,000 cars. It's tough to take that away and digest. It just seems wrong. I appreciate the data, but I guess the takeaway here, or at least from our end, is that it seems like way too many cars going down a family street with kids playing on riding their bikes up and down, hockey nets, basketball nets. It seems like there's going to be a lot going on with the development, particularly if it's going to be, if the entrance and the exit is going to be on a Nightingale. My second point, or our second point, sorry, is more towards the councillors and the mayor who's online here. It feels like this, I don't know, to me, and again, what the people have shared tonight is this has been designed like this for 17 years. I don't understand why the exit is on Nightingale, why it logically, in my mind, it should be on Shellard's. And it seems like the disruption of a pathway is more important than the disruption of 60 homes that live there 365 days of the year. Not looking for you guys to comment on anything right now, but really looking for you to take away and try to find another solution for the flow of traffic.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and we'll make sure that they get put in the minutes. Do you have any other questions or comments? And again,
No,
this was the first submission, and so we will take into account the comments and try to address them as best we can, as well. The applicant will as well. And we can follow up with you if there's any changes in the concept plan with the resubmission.
The only other thing we wish to bring forward is just a quick comment around the previous gentleman who asked questions, and the parking on Fisher Street is quite a lot. And if it's noted in the record, that I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. Our next member of the public who would like to ask a question is Natalka Petrella. Natalka, you could go ahead with your question, please.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm a resident on Nightingale Drive. I'm at 51. And I guess my main concern here is not necessarily that this property was medium density. My concern is that you have one in and out traffic flow for all of that, like all of those new stacked housing. You guys have, if you look, there's, I guess, I don't know what to call them, row houses. They're kind of a bungalow style. There's probably less properties there, and they exit onto 2 different streets. So that really changes the traffic flow. So I have a hard time looking at this and seeing only one in and out point. I know you said Shellards isn't an option, but like, what about Conklin Road? I mean, there's a plaza that already goes in and out there. Like, is there some way to do that?
I think maybe James, if you want to comment on that, that you approach the neighbor next door. I think you mentioned that earlier. If you just want to reiterate that that point.
Yeah, if I may, I'm sorry, I didn't get the speaker's last name.
Oh, sorry, it's Petrella.
Okay. So first of all, and I'll just bore you for a moment with engineering standards, no disrespect to the city engineer. Road accesses are designed such that you're allowed a maximum number of units per how many driveway connections you have. In Brantford, it's a linear distance. You can have so many units provided that your total road length is no more than, I believe it's 250 meters. So this project meets that threshold.
Oh, yes.
So when we were at that preliminary discussion stage, the thinking was it was preferred to actually consolidate the points of access internally to the neighborhood down to the single point of access. So that's what you see in the current development proposal. Again, we did engage with city staff at the outset to see if they would be amenable to providing access onto Shellard, and they said based on its design, its traffic load, and the future plans, the response was a negative in terms of our ability to make that connection. We've also approached the property immediately to the east. Don had extensive discussions with them, but there was no conclusion wherein that property owner was in any way amenable to allowing us to route our traffic out across their property to Conklin Avenue. So believe me, we've explored every option possible, and are trying to provide a proposal that fits to the best degree possible with the road network that essentially we've inherited by the original approval of the subdivision, and designing our traffic and our unit counts such that we can mitigate those impacts. I know that's a very technical answer, but the numbers do work. They're within the realm of acceptable standards, but we're more than happy to continue the dialogue and see what additional measures, if any, in terms of traffic calming, parking enforcement, can also be implemented part and parcel with this development, such that not just the traffic from this development, but any existing background traffic issues can be, properly addressed by the neighborhood.
Okay. And I do understand some of that. And like I said, I understand what you're saying, that's where it's been designated. It just seems like I'm with the rest of the neighbors. It seems like an awful lot of traffic to be filtering through, in my mind, what's a side street subdivision. And like the neighbors all said, there's a lot of kids around here. Even my other neighbor on Fisher, that corner is a big problem. You can't have 2 cars driving in opposite directions around that corner right now. You have to stop to allow one car to get through before another can go. So, I mean, we have all of those issues now, and then we're going to be filtering all of those cars out into that area. It's very concerning. And then with the children, how are you guys is there anything that we're talking about how to control speeding right out of there?
I think one of the advantages that that current street network, in fact, has is that it's very compact, very short runs of road length. So I think, in fact, the design, again, I don't live there, so I haven't seen it to the extent that you have. But when I look at the design of those streets and those very short lengths and the number of turns, it does seem to me to have been designed in a manner that actually helps with, and what you'll continually hear about is called traffic calming. So that road design and the fact that there's potentially a number of exits, whether it's from Yarrington, Fisher Street, or I don't know, I'll make a hash of this, but Schertzberg Lane. In fact, there's 3 different ways for traffic to infiltrate and exfiltrate from the neighborhood. So hopefully that's going to help diffuse the volumes and it won't be concentrated. But again, we're looking at building to full municipal standards in terms of the roads, sidewalks on both sides, which is desired for complete streets. But we're more than happy to talk about what other improvements can be done to further help with traffic calming.
Okay, like one concern is speeding, because I mean, it's different when you reverse or pull out from a driveway. You're giving people a roadway that they're driving on and then exiting onto the street. And that one strip of Nightingale there where all of those residents live, if somebody comes out of this area very quickly, like that can be problematic.
Yeah, and perhaps what we're doing with this design that's going to help alleviate the concern on Nightingale is that we made that conscious decision at the submission stage, rather than townhouse units in another exit point, we're putting 6 lots for single family detached homes. So there'll be driveways, there'll be cars in the driveways, there'll be cars in and out from those homes, and that in itself will help to the extent possible with slowing down traffic, because now it's not just going to be on the west side of the road. You're going to have that pattern mimicked on the east side of the road, and that should also help slow the cars down.
Okay, I would be interested to see how this keeps morphing in the future. I'm very concerned with the traffic flow here, so I'd be happy to hear more about it at a later date.
Okay, thank you, Natalka. Is there any other follow-up question you have or concern?
Myself, no, I'm good, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Nicole, we have no more questions. This will conclude our public question period.
Excuse me, I actually do have a couple follow-ups if I may.
Absolutely, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. For the parking, that is the parking going to be designated for the units, or is it going to be a free-for-all?
I'm going to ask Erica to assist me with that. I believe what we're doing is unbundled parking, which is the newer, more preferred approach. But Erica, if you could perhaps comment on that.
So unbundled parking is, and it's essentially up to the developer. Unbundling is separating the cost of parking from the unit. So if you need the parking, it's available to you. And if you opt not to need any parking, you are not required to purchase a space. So I can't speak to the specifics of the plan for that though.
Okay, thank you. So a question for staff then, really same question. What would be better, like a more beneficial for the community if we were to request sort of strict parking, so you know what unit you are and that's the parking spot you have, or this bundling?
Well, I think the way they laid it out in their parking justification was actually that they would have 1 parking space per unit, and then that would give them, I think it was 20 visitor spaces left over. So there should be some allocation to some degree to ensure that there is enough visitors. So for example, if everyone in the neighborhood is interested in buying 1 or 2 parking spaces, and then there's no visitor left over, because in our bylaw, we don't require visitor parking separated out. So we would like to see some type of allocation with respect to visitors versus required resident parking. So the 1 space per unit may work for most people, and then the visitor space would be available to either a second car in the residential unit or a visitor. So I think that we would look to that in the future to have that sort of allocation.
Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add to that?
Sure.
Sorry, the benefit of unbundling the parking is that it essentially rewards people who don't own a vehicle. They're not required to purchase the space. So it's enticing to those who choose to use alternative modes, and that can be really attractive for cyclists, pedestrians, transit users, all of that, and makes it a really dynamic site in that regard. And that's one of the unbundling parking is one of the TDM measures that we see recommended all over the place.
Okay. Sorry.
Don Husak here from Don Victoria Homes. I think at the moment, I mean, we're looking at these things, but it's too early to say. I mean, generally everything we've done up until now, we've allocated parking, and then we haven't given more than one parking spot per unit, and then we leave the surplus, and it's been pretty successful. Like I go into like we do this kind of development work all the time, and I go into these places on the weekends, and I mean, I always find a parking space. So, you know, we're looking at everything. Obviously, we want to make the most efficient use of parking, but so far, the one spot per unit and then the other parking spaces being free is what has been successful in the past. But I mean, we continue to look. So it's not that we wouldn't consider it, but I think it's at that point right now, we're just looking at everything from a higher viewpoint. So for the moment, I think I would probably stick with what Nicole was saying for one space per unit, and then the other spaces being optional.
Would you be able to pin that down a little bit more, Don, through the condominium application? Once you have purchasers and who bought a parking space and who didn't?
Yeah, correct. So, and what happens sometimes, because this is on a bus route, there may be someone who doesn't need a parking space. I mean, that's what's going to happen. But there's someone who might need an extra, and they just rent a parking space off the other person, you know. So, I mean, they do get utilized. They don't sit there empty. So, well, I mean, we're certainly looking at everything all the time. But I mean, in the past, that's worked. And I don't see a parking problem with this project based on what we've done in the past.
Okay, thank you. I guess we're just wanting to make sure that the site can sustain itself and not have any overflow on street parking. You know, maybe on occasion that may happen, but on, you know, it should be a standalone development. I think that's more the concern.
So thank you for that, Nicole. And Don, thank you. Are we going to be building this entire project all at once, or is it going to be piecemeal as the units get sold? In the blocks, obviously.
No, we'll be building it all at once.
Okay, that's
actually, we'll try and, I mean, obviously we roll through these places. Once we get going, we roll through them pretty quickly. It's the, you know, the planning processes take longer than the actual building processes, but I mean, that's just the way it is. But no, we'll build it all at once.
Okay, and then just a last comment for me, just I guess in closing, essentially, I just wanted to thank the developer for actually bringing this forward in this manner. Typically, we don't get to have these discussions until after there's a submission, and this developer is doing it pre-submission, so he can listen to what we all said tonight and hopefully make some positive changes that will help the neighborhood with the project. So I do appreciate that. It doesn't happen like this all the time. So thank you.
So they do have an official plan amendment and a rezoning application in for, but this is, yeah, like you said, it's their first submission, and they are looking to do that second submission, taking into account some of the comments and actually in his presentation, James, you had a revised proposal already that you were thinking about. So yeah, so I guess we could conclude the meeting tonight. If anyone else has any comments, questions?
No, if I may, just in closing, again, thank you very much for organizing this meeting tonight, Nicole, and councillors. We really do value your input as well as the responses from the neighbors. They live in this neighborhood. They appreciate what the real issues are in terms of the public interest. So again, you know, we've completed our initial phase of the development application review process. We've got the city's technical comments and we're working our way through that. As we get closer to a resubmission, we're quite happy to share, to the extent possible, all of that material. Everything that obviously submitted through Nicole becomes public information. Anyone can have anything, but we can make our contact details available as well, and we're more than happy to share any material regarding the proposal. And certainly, you know, the more public engagement that we have through the project will just benefit everyone when we appear before planning committee seeking approvals of these instruments. So again, thank you all very much, and we look forward to continued working with you through this process. And I do apologize for the technical issues. The IT guy has been emailed.
Thanks, James.
Thanks. Okay, so I'll wrap up by saying that, again, thank you everyone for attending. I will be sending out some minutes from this meeting, you know, in the next, I would say in the next week, because we want to make sure that we have substantial, the minutes all captured, and we will send that out to all attendees. And I think that concludes the meeting for this evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Nicole? Nicole?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
If there's an appetite for it, can we leave the meeting open with Gary, Peever, Rick, myself, and the mayor if needed?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll speak to our technical staff and make sure that we can